Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Eloisa Ramos, and we are studying the text of A Course in Miracles. And I'm joined with Connie. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
And my daughter, Sonia. Hi. And Teresa's probably not going to be with us physically or by Zoom today, but next time she will, or in a few weeks she will. And we left off, let's see, on chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness. And it's section 3, the guide to salvation. Okay, and the guide to salvation. Okay, paragraph 1. The way to recognize your brother is by recognizing the Holy Spirit in him. I have already said that the Holy Spirit is the bridge for the transfer of perception to knowledge. So we can use the terms as if they were related, because in his mind they are. And notice the capitalization there of his and mind. So this relationship must be in his mind, because unless it were, the separation between the two ways of thinking would not be open to healing. He is part of the Holy Trinity because his mind is partly yours and also partly God's. This needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. Okay, so let's just look at it line by line. The way to recognize your brother is by recognizing the Holy Spirit in him. Okay, so when we look at someone, we will not recognize that they're a brother, meaning that we are both created by the same creator. We may see him as a stranger, or we may see him as a body, and whatever, differences show up in that perception. We will fail to see that they're not different from us. They're the same because we were created by the same creator. And that one creator cannot make different, let's see, the same cause cannot have different effects. Does that make sense? So a creator, I have a lemon tree in my backyard and I'm looking at it, and it would be like, if I look at it, I'm saying, oh, yes, it's got all these lemons, but some of them actually they look more like oranges. So maybe they're not lemons, maybe they're oranges. Their color is a little different, or, oh, well, those look, small and they're still green. Well, maybe those are limes and not really lemons. So I'm looking at all the fruit from the same tree, but I'm starting to make differences in my perception. Okay. And so pretty soon when I look at that tree, I'm seeing, oh, there's actually bananas there, So that's the imagination just sort of going, with that idea of differences of separation. It's a perception of separation. So when my mind is doing that, I am failing to recognize that we are the same, created by the same creator, and therefore we are brothers. And when we recognize the sameness, what we are recognizing is the Holy Spirit in him, because that's our essential nature, which is spirit. So that's our true essential nature. So line 2 says, I have already said that the Holy Spirit is the bridge for the transfer of perception to knowledge. Okay, so if I'm looking at all these differences and I'm seeing bananas and, apples and oranges and all these things, and I'm failing to recognize, wait a minute, they're just fruit. So what does it matter? That the form of it, the color of it, the shape of it is different. Okay, that's what perception does. Perception lends itself to perceiving differences. But knowledge is not perception. Knowledge is absolute truth, and it's not seeing with the body's senses. So when we know something as truth, we are not using the body's senses to perceive it. And so the Holy Spirit is the bridge, because once we can recognize the Spirit as the essential nature in everyone, then that's what's going to help us make that 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 transition to remember absolute truth, which is just love. And it will be an experience, as it says on the last line here. It says this needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. So all the knowings come to us as an experience of knowing. It's a whole insight of what is the truth. And all you say is, well, of course, it's not like, it's like that's why it's like a remembering, because you just recognize it as having always been true, but somehow I had forgotten about it. And so let's see. And so it says, so we can use the terms as if they were related, because in his mind they are. So the Holy Spirit is the bridge for the transfer of perception to knowledge. So we can use the terms as if they were related, because in his mind they are. Okay, so so the perception here is true perception. And true perception is so close to knowledge that we can use the terms as if they were related, because in the mind of God, sameness is recognizing that we are brothers and one creation, which is, I think, the closest we can come with perception to knowledge. Let's see, number 3, this relationship must be in his mind, because unless it were, the separation between the two ways of thinking would not be open to healing. Okay. Okay, so perception and knowledge are two ways of thinking. Perception is an ego-based way of thinking, and knowledge is a God base of thinking. Now, only one of those ways is real. So we can call them both thinking, but one of them is really imagining, because it's thinking, but it's, illusion. And only the thinking with God is real. And if those two were in reality separate, then the healing could not happen. And so the link is the Holy Spirit, which is our right mind or true perception. And so false perception is not really perception. Anything that's false is not really that, right? So if I say, let's see, okay, if I say, okay, well, 4 plus 4 is 8, that's true, but 4 plus 2 is also 8. And I'm saying, well, no, that's false. Okay, so so that's an error. So if I have established a system where this is true, I can't just say, well, there's also something else that is not true, but it's also true, because it's an error. So the error is not true by definition. So let's see. So number 4, he is part of the Holy Trinity. So he's talking about the Holy Spirit. And because his mind is partly yours. So his mind, he's talking about God's mind, capital H, capital M, is partly yours because God is in our mind and we are in God's mind, and also partly God's. And that's why the Course calls the Holy Spirit the bridge between knowledge and perception. And so, let's see. So number 5, this needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. So until we have that experience, it's not going to be completely clear to us just by reading statements about it. Okay. All right. So number 2.
The Holy Spirit is the idea of healing. Being thought, the idea gains as it is shared. Being the call for God, it is also the idea of God. Since you are part of God, it is also the idea of yourself as well as of all his creation. The idea of the Holy Spirit shares the property of other ideas because it follows the laws of the universe of which it is a part. It is strengthened by being given away. It increases in you as you give it to your brother. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. He may have dissociated the call for God just as you have. This dissociation is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him and thus acknowledge its being.
Okay. What do you want to say with that paragraph, Sonia, or what's coming through for you?
That it's just a call for love. So if anyone is asking, whatever, it doesn't matter if they have dissociated, like it says in sentence 9, you may have dissociated the call for God, just as you have. At least what's coming up for me is just that giving and receiving is the same. So it doesn't really, as long as I see the sanity in my brother, if I look beyond the body and the behavior and whatever, as long as I'm recognizing the Christ in them, then I'm not dissociating from Holy Spirit. I mean, it's kind of hard to put into words, but it's more like just seeing them, anything insane or whatever is just a call for love. It's a call for God. Yeah. And I really had to kind of realize that, like, it's not my job to fix anyone or to, give advice or do whatever. It's just, yeah.
Yes, and it's very interesting because the first line there, paragraph 2, it says the Holy Spirit is the idea of healing. So, so when you recognize a call for love, you're recognizing a call for healing because the mind is sick. And when you can offer the knowledge of the idea of the Holy Spirit as our true essential nature, then you're sharing that idea, which is healing, not just for them, but for us too, because in that process, we recognize more and more that it's really true that our mind is not a sick mind. Our mind is the mind that God created holy, which is the Holy Spirit. So, so it helps us to stay in our right mind, in our sane mind, and it helps us to offer that to others, which is how the mind is healed, because it's one mind, one ego thought system that is sick, because it's a belief in separation. It's a belief that we have lost love, that we have lost our essential nature because we're one with our creator. It's almost like saying we have lost God, or we have, actually, it's almost like saying we have lost ourself, our true self, which of course doesn't make any sense, because here we are, so we obviously haven't lost ourself. It just appears that way, and we're believing the appearances. So let's see. There was just something else there about where it says universe, something about universe.
Sentence 5.
5. Idea of the Holy Spirit shares the property of other ideas because it follows the laws of the universe, of which it is a part. It is strengthened by being given away. Okay, so so the law of the universe, that what we give away is strengthened, okay, is not a law of the world, okay, because the world believes that when you give something, you lose it. So the laws of the world are based on scarcity. That's why the survival instinct is so strong, because it's an idea of loss, of there not being enough for everyone. So when it's talking here about the idea of the Holy Spirit as the laws of the universe, it's not talking about the physical universe. I think some of the theories about the universe says that it's expanding, but at some point it's going to contract. So it's still an idea that even in the physical universe, there's a limit. And once it reaches that limit, it's going to come back this way again, which is still a belief of duality. So let's see. And number 8 too is interesting. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. So yes, so let's see. Because he may have dissociated the call for God just as you have. But the dissociation is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him, and thus acknowledge its being. And the its is with a capital I. So as we recognize that when we're calling for love, we are in a place of feeling lack and incompletion and emptiness, loneliness, because we are really believing and we have identified with the idea of being separate, and a separate ego, a separate body. So, so to become aware that there's another way to experience ourselves, because sometimes that suffering kind of shifts something, and it says, oh my gosh, there's got to be another way. How can it be like this? It's and so once the mind makes that little shift, then it opens up to the Holy Spirit, because that's the call for God. It's saying, oh man, I dug myself into a really deep hole and I can't get myself out, so I need help. So it's when we call for that help, we're actually reaching to something beyond what we have been relying on. And that opens up the mind to healing. Because when we're dissociated, we completely believe that we're separate. And as long as everything goes fine, that seems to be a pretty good belief to hold on to. But, you know, when everything starts falling apart and we have no control and we, you know, are experiencing loss here and loss there, and, you know, there's sickness and death and conflict and war and all of that, then it's like, wait a minute, you know, I cannot handle this on my own. So then we're in a position to question the idea that I'm on my own, to ask for higher help. Okay. Anything, Connie?
Yeah, I was wondering if either of you have an example of how, like in line 6, increasing it as you've given it away. Yeah, and how, if you've noticed anything in that regard.
Let's see, it's increasing it by being given away. So
Coming across, like if, you know, Sonia said, if she runs across someone, you know, who's acting a little bit off, and then somehow you can impart an idea of healing.
yes. So the main way to do it, Connie, is with forgiveness. So for example, okay, if I say something and that seems to be a trigger for someone, okay, I'm not trying to push their buttons, okay, but I say something and all of a sudden they get very defensive and they start, you know, they raise their voice and they start accusing me of things. Okay. So at that moment, if I recognize, oh, wow, you know, there's something there that's unhealed. Okay. And I'm not going to accept the guilt and the condemnation they're throwing at me, because that's not true. You know, I didn't cause their upset. Okay. Yes, I may have been the trigger for it, but those are not the same things. Okay. So if I can recognize that that behavior that just showed up, which was a change from how they were a minute ago, which they were very friendly, they were, you know, we're having a conversation. All of a sudden there's a turn here. Okay. If I recognize, okay, they're not their behavior. Okay. And so I just stay very calm and I listen to what they say. And then, you know, I either just stay open and let them have their say and not react. Okay. Because if I react to it, if then they say or do something that I get triggered and then I get upset, then it's supporting their misperception. Okay. And so now we're stuck reflecting back error.
Right.
Okay. So the way to strengthen the right mind, or the Holy Spirit, is by staying in our right mind and by forgiving it, which is really recognizing, okay, that what this person is doing, they're not really doing anything to me. Okay. They're just reacting to their own past pain, whatever that triggered for them. And they're seeing only the past. And I do that too. So I can forgive them. I don't have to, you know, it's not like they're different and somehow I've never done it. You know, so in that way, we're actually acknowledging and forgiving ourselves when we offer love, because it's a call for love. So anytime you can offer forgiveness, you can offer love, you can offer just peace, if you can maintain your inner peace, that's going to help them, and it's going to be strengthened in you. So
Mhm.
that's how it's strengthened, because when you give it, you become more aware that you have it in you. And so it becomes a stronger, let's see, sense of self, of true self, an experience of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you don't actually need to say anything. I mean, sometimes it could be with a word or two or whatever. Or it's just an exchange in the mind.
That's right. Because depending on the kind of relationship you have with them, it may just be that you stay calm and you just listen. And in fact, if you don't get hooked, if you don't get engaged in the upset, after a few moments, they will kind of release that, and they will actually see, oh, geez, why did I react so, they will actually reflect on their own behavior and see that it was not in accord with what the present moment was calling for. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I will say something, but it's to someone that's very close to me and that's also studying Course in Miracles. Maybe I'll say something like, well, that was quite a defense reaction there. But not in a bad way, just kind of pointing it out. And then I notice they'll step back and they'll look at that and they'll say, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I welcome that when people would say that to me. Yeah.
Yeah, because on the spiritual path, it's really nice to have others who can kind of bring that to our attention, because
Yeah.
we are blind to it when we're caught up in it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a quick little, I was just reflecting on something that happened over the weekend. We were having a few friends for dinner, and a couple of them we haven't seen in about 30 years. And so we were really looking forward to getting together. And at the last minute, one of them called and said he couldn't make it. He'd done something with his back. Anyway, I was so disappointed. And so was my husband. But in that moment, I was really paying attention to myself, and I wanted to acknowledge he was not feeling well, even though I was so disappointed. I mean, I did let him know I was really disappointed, but I also did share my empathy and compassion for his canceling and not being able to come. But yeah, so we were able to, have a conversation a little bit and get on with things. But I was just remembering in the past when I had an incident like that with my sister many years ago, and she canceled at the last minute, and I got so angry. And we left it like that. And I was just reflecting how different it was this time, even though I think it was the same emotion. I was really just so disappointed. But yeah, I was with it in a different way. So yeah, I was glad to just kind of look at that now after your example. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
rather than saying, oh, can't you just take a pain pill and calm make him feel, terrible? And yeah. So disappointment is something. That's not real. I mean, it's those expectations of, yeah.
Yes, and the thing about the expectations is that we we're really disappointed that our expectation was wrong because we
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. Wow.
Yeah, we want
Huh.
our expectations to be to have authority over what happens in the future because it's a way of believing that we have control over
Right.
yeah, the unknown because it's fearful. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
so when our expectations are not met, it's a reminder that that's not true. That's we have a little fantasy going on there.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Yeah, that's a big deal, big thing to get. Yeah,
Mhm.
we're thinking it's somehow the truth and how it's supposed to be. So
Of
it's
course.
in a sense, then I'm grateful that occurred.
Yes, because they're all really learning opportunities. They
Huh.
really are, I
Mm,
mean, they can be very painful, but if you
yeah,
remember that they're really an opportunity there, there's a lesson there.
yeah.
You won't be,
Interesting.
what's the word? You
Mm.
won't think that they're bad anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, then you won't have that pain,
Yeah.
that suffering from it. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Great. Well, I'm glad I did share about that. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for
That was
sharing
Oh,
it.
helpful.
thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a good example.
Huh. I didn't realize that there was something more to that. So good.
Yeah, the course says to not plan, and an expectation is really a plan.
Yes.
Yes, because we set ourselves up for
Mm.
disappointment and suffering.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Mm. Wow.
Yeah. So let's see. Number 3. There are two diametrically
I
opposed
think it's
ways.
my
Yes,
turn.
Oh,
it
yes,
is.
it is,
It's
Connie.
Connie's turn.
Thank you for reminding me.
Okay. All right. There are two diametrically opposed ways of seeing your brother. They must both be in your mind because you are the perceiver. They must also be in his because you are perceiving him. See him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. What you acknowledge in your brother, you are acknowledging in yourself. And what you share, you strengthen.
Mhm.
It's just really to think that there are two diametrically opposed ways of seeing going on all the time is really something.
It
And to
is. Mhm.
really be aware of that, it's like, wow.
Yes. So that's perception when it says seeing. Okay, so it's
Mm,
not Holy Spirit. Holy
right.
Spirit is vision. So we have these two ways of seeing. It's true perception and false perception. They're diametrically opposed. Okay. And so they are both in our mind, the perceiving mind. Okay, not our whole true, not split mind. Because we believe we are the perceiver. Okay. And because we're the ones that are seeing it. So um, you are the perceiver, and they must also be in his because you are perceiving him. Okay. Okay.
So that's
So,
the piece that's quite confusing. Thinking that,
yes.
okay, thinking that you say are having the same things in your head as I am.
Well,
That's,
that's because the ego thought system is also just one mind. Okay. And it doesn't, and that's not very
the ego thought
obvious.
system is one mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. It is. It's one thought system, with many beliefs.
Okay.
But the issue is that it's a thought system of separation. So it will split into many, 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 many parts so that we don't recognize that it's just one thought system. Because remember, it's either love or fear. Okay.
Mhm.
So once we go into fear, um, then the idea of wholeness is just you know, we don't have, we've split off from it, we've dissociated from it. So then what we do is we make up duality by perceiving God as if God was part of perception. So what we do is we bring knowledge into perception instead of taking perception into knowledge. Okay, and that's why we have a dualistic system of perception. Okay, so that's why the Course presents it as if there's true perception and there's false perception, because it represents that it represents the belief that our mind is split. Okay, and that one side is in alignment with truth, and another side is a block to the awareness of that truth. So the split perception is the reflection of the belief of separation itself. And the best we can do with perception is to bring all of our thoughts, beliefs into alignment with higher truth. You see, because the level of belief, there's beliefs, there's emotion, and then there's physical objects. Well, perception works with separate objects. That's why we have beliefs that are different, emotions that are different, and objects that are different, because there's a gap between the perceiver, which is the subject, and the perceived, which is an object. And in between, there seems to be a gap. Yeah. So when we look at someone here, and it says, let's see. Oh, wrong paragraph. There are two diametrically opposed paragraphs. Okay. So they must both be in your mind because you are the perceiver. They must also be in his because you are perceiving him. Okay. So when we perceive him, he's actually just a projection of our thinking. Okay. So it's not like you're really there separate from me as an object. It just appears that way. So the Course says, everything in the world is an idea. So the ideas have not really left the mind. We just see them as objects and think that they have a separate sense of individuality in and of themselves. So we make every single object a separate individual thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's still all just the interpretation of it is all in our mind. So the way that I see you is still just my own interpretation of what I think about you. Okay, my own judgments about you. Okay, so I'm not really seeing you as the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So that's why 4 says, see him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. So if we stop seeing him as an object to be perceived, and we recognize, okay, everything is all just spirit, our essential nature, creation is all spirit. My lemon tree is just spirit. It's all spirit. Then I can have an experience of oneness, of recognizing that that he's not separate from me. He's me. He's just a reflection of me. Okay. And that's why and then that's why 5 says, what you acknowledge in your brother, you're acknowledging in yourself. Because he's just reflecting back what I think about myself, and what you share, you strengthen. Okay. So that reflection is going to come back to me to reinforce my own ideas and beliefs, which I have projected out there to see. So it's a loop of reinforcement. So it strengthens. Yeah. Whatever ideas we have about our brother, that's what's going to be strengthened. And we're going to believe them about ourselves too. Yeah. Did that help, Connie? Yeah, so perception is a very funny thing. I mean, I think that, you know, when we choose perception over knowledge, we're choosing it because we want to see what is not there. Okay, because knowledge cannot show us what is not there. Only our imagination can show us what is not there. And it's not real. It's not a real mind. It's an imagining mind that makes things up. It's like, you know, oh, well, what if, you know, and then I can come up with a story, you know, I can come up with a lot of fiction, right? And I mean, think about most of our entertainment and even, you know, our so-called reality shows are still just based on ideas that are fictional about what we are, and we just play roles and we act them out. So, yeah. Okay. So, all right. So number 4, the voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you, and that is why you must share it. It must be increased in strength before you can hear it. It is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. It is not weak in itself, but it is limited by your unwillingness to hear it. If you make the mistake of looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, your thoughts will frighten you because by adopting the ego's viewpoint, you are undertaking an ego alien journey with the ego as the guide. This is bound to produce fear. Okay, so the whole point is that, you know, to strengthen, we must share, which is the previous line right there. And what you share, you strengthen. So the reason for why the voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you, in us, is because we're not sharing it enough. We're not practicing forgiveness. We're not practicing offering love. So, so that's why you must share it. It must be increased in strength before you can hear it. And it is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. And it's not that it's weak in itself, okay, but when we block it out, okay, and we block it out, the blocking it out is an unwillingness to hear it. And that's the choice for the ego. So that's why the Course says all you need is a little willingness and the Holy Spirit will do the rest. And therefore, it's asking us to not protect our ego thought system. Because if we protect our ego thought system, it means we don't want to change our mind. And we're going to be very identified with those ideas and those beliefs. And so that's why over here it says, if you make the mistake of looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, okay, so that's an ego identity, yourself alone, okay, your thoughts will frighten you because we'll be looking at our ego thoughts, which are all fear-based. It's only 2 thought system, one of love and one of fear. So by adopting the ego's viewpoint, which is one of fear, it's one of scarcity, it's one of, I have to survive on my own because I'm alone. And on top of that, you know, I'm a weak body and a personality that frankly has to hide its weakness to appear strong. So that's undertaking an ego alien journey. And I think the word alien, what it's saying is that we have lost the sense of our true self. So it's an ego alien journey with the ego as the guide. And this is bound to produce fear. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay, number 5.
Delay is of the ego because time is its concept. Both time and delay are meaningless in eternity. I have said before that the Holy Spirit is God's answer to the ego. Everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is in direct opposition to the ego's notions, because true and false perceptions are themselves opposed. The Holy Spirit has the task of undoing what the ego has made. He undoes it at the same level on which the ego operates, or the mind would be unable to understand the change.
Okay. Anything there, Sonia?
Not really, just line 6. It's just interesting.
Yes. So the ego thought system is one of separation, and therefore it's one of levels. So number 6 is he undoes it at the same level in which the ego operates, or the mind would not be able to understand the change. Okay. So remember that consciousness, as the Course says, is the domain of the ego. And so so that's where the undoing would happen. It would happen at the level of consciousness, which the ego operates. And that includes the emotions, the beliefs, the perceptions. That's why the miracle is a change in perception. So consciousness is the level of perception. And because otherwise the mind would be unable to understand the change. And so when there's a miracle, when there's healing, the shift in perception is noticed by consciousness, and that's the learning that comes through. That's the insight. That's like the aha moment. Okay. And so it's almost like, the light has shone through on something, and it's like, oh, gee, there's no monster under the bed. It was all my imagination. Okay. I thought there was a problem and it was fearful, and it's not there. So I'm seeing clearly now. I'm seeing that I was believing in something that was not true, that I had made up, that I had misperceived. And that clears. So the mind lets go of believing in what is not true, because it recognizes it's not true. So let's see. So, and time itself, delay is of the ego because time is its concept. So time itself is a separation belief. We have it broken up into past, present, and future. And of course, time is is very closely associated with the body, the existence of the body for a short time between birth and death, and that's time for each individual. So both time and delay are meaningless in eternity. There's no time in eternity. And I have said before, Holy Spirit is God's answer to the ego. God's answer to the ego is wake up. The separation never happened. It's a dream. So that's the answer. There was no separation. You're believing in something that never happened. So Number 4, everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is the direct opposition to the ego's notions, because true and false perceptions are themselves opposed. Yes, so we can't believe, they're opposed because we can't believe on both, in both at the same time, because they contradict one another. And so what happens is, in order to believe in one thought system, the ego thought system, we have to block out the other thought system. So we dissociate, we split the mind. When we let go of believing in the ego thought system, which is false, then we recognize the truth. We recognize what is true by letting go of what is false. And it's a remembering or a recognition, realization. And the Holy Spirit has the task of undoing what the ego has made. So the Holy Spirit is the right mind that still has the connection, the link to the light of truth that dispels the darkness, the error, the block to the awareness of truth. And it's undone at the level of consciousness in which the ego operates. And so that's why we have to do the work of bringing the error to consciousness to be looked at, okay? Because if we repress it and keep it in the unconscious, we're protecting it from the light of truth. And so the little willingness is the little willingness to offer it up to the Holy Spirit by bringing it up to the level of consciousness to look at. Yeah, you know, the reason why we bury it, of course, is because it's painful, or it's not something we want to see. But we're not bringing it up to give ourselves pain. We're bringing it up so that we can release it. So it's just a temporary thing that because we need to be able to look at it with the Holy Spirit to really see that it's not true. It's not. It was just a misperception. So anyway, okay, number 6.
Okay. I have repeatedly emphasized that one level of the mind is not understandable to another. So it is with the ego and the Holy Spirit, with time and eternity. Eternity is an idea of God, so the Holy Spirit understands it perfectly. Time is a belief of the ego, so the lower mind, which is the ego's domain, accepts it without question. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yes, and so, you know, when you look at some of the spiritual teachings, the emphasis is on now, right? Because that is you could say, the gateway or the portal to being able to connect with our right mind, with the Holy Spirit. And that's an idea of God that's eternal. So let's see. And that's why it's not possible to combine the two levels. We do a really good job of trying to reconcile spirit with the body, or believing that, you know, the spirit resides in the body, or that the body is the temple for the Holy Spirit, or that kind of thing. But that's not possible because the ideas are, because the ego cannot understand the idea of wholeness and eternity when it is a belief of non-eternity, of non-wholeness. Yeah, okay. So, okay, number 7. The Holy Spirit is the mediator between the interpretations of the ego and the knowledge of the spirit. His ability to deal with symbols enables him to work with the ego's beliefs in its own language. His ability to look beyond symbols into eternity enables him to understand the laws of God, for which he speaks. He can therefore perform the function of reinterpreting what the ego makes, not by destruction, but by understanding. Understanding is light, and light leads to knowledge. The Holy Spirit is in light because he is in you who are light. But you yourself do not know this. It is therefore the task of the Holy Spirit to reinterpret you on behalf of God. Okay, so it's very interesting. We are reinterpreting ourselves because the way that we have defined ourselves as an ego by the same ego, by the same thought system, is a false identity. So the Holy Spirit is the mediator between the interpretations of the ego. So what we have done is we have made an interpretation of what we think we are. Okay, and there's error in there. So anytime there's interpretation, there's a margin of error. Okay, because it's not direct communication. And so it's making the distinction here because the ego interprets and the spirit knows. So there's certainty in knowledge and there's not certainty in what the ego interprets. However, the Holy Spirit is able to work with symbols, and symbols are words, for example. Words can mean one thing, but the same word can also mean something else. So it's a symbol that can be given different meanings. So that's what symbols are. That's why we have different languages. You know, different words can mean the same thing. So, and let's see. And his ability to look beyond symbols into eternity enables him to understand the laws of God. Okay, from which he speaks. So he's using, the Holy Spirit uses everything the ego makes, and right here in line 4, he can therefore perform the function of reinterpreting what the ego makes. So the ego interprets things one way, and then the Holy Spirit comes and reinterprets that interpretation so that it comes into alignment with knowledge. At the level of the belief system, still at the level of perception, but it's true perception now because there's no conflict. There's no, it's a little bit like, let's see, I was going to say there's no, it's a little bit like a window. And if the window is clean, then you know, the light can come right through. But if it's all dirty, there's going to be a block to it. So the Holy Spirit is a window cleaner. Okay. That's our right mind. So, and therefore it opens the way to the light of communication, of true communication to come through. So let's see. In that light, the Holy Spirit is in light because he is in you who are light. But you yourself do not know this. So therefore it's his task to reinterpret you on behalf of God. So it's almost like and that's why we have to admit that we were wrong about ourselves. So we have to be able to be willing to be wrong about what we have been thinking about ourselves, because we made up all these ideas about who we think we are, who we think other people are, who we think God is, all these ideas, and they're made up, they're not true. So now we have to be willing to let those go, have the Holy Spirit reinterpret so that so that the things that are reflecting back to us, our thought system, is in alignment with truth, so that the loop of misinterpretation can become a loop of true interpretation of Holy Spirit vision, which will strengthen, because it is a loop, okay? The more we share it, just like the ego thought system strengthens itself in a loop, so does the true perception. Okay, number 8.
You cannot understand yourself alone. This is because you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship, and the rightful place of the sonship is God. This is your life, your eternity, and yourself. It is of this that the Holy Spirit reminds you. It is this that the Holy Spirit sees. This vision frightens the ego because it is so calm. This is the ego's greatest enemy because, according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival. The ego becomes strong in strife. If you believe there is strife, you will react viciously because the idea of danger has entered your mind. The idea itself is an appeal to the ego. The Holy Spirit is as vigilant as the ego to the call of danger, opposing it with his strength just as the ego welcomes it. The Holy Spirit counters this welcome by welcoming peace. Eternity and peace are as closely related as are time and war.
Okay. You want to say anything there, Sonia?
No, it just reminded me of certain interactions with people because I can kind of see how like the idea of danger and fighting it's kind of like the wish for what does it say, the wish for death or never mind, you can go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so the idea of danger is basically fear, right? So to perceive danger is to be afraid that something can be harmful to us, or that can kill us, or that can hurt us, or that can take something away from us. That it's the idea that we are vulnerable to attack. So, and that's how we justify. See, number 9, if you believe there is strife, you will react viciously because the idea of danger has entered your mind. And for the most part, that's how we justify cruelty, as a defense, basically, or we can, if we can make up a story that says, I'm the victim here, then I can feel justified in reacting viciously because, I'm the one that was, it's basically like saying, well, you started it first, so I have, I have a right to defend by attack. So I perpetuate the attack because because then after I attack, then the other side can say, well, yes, but we were justified in attacking you first. So you should have just taken the attack and you attacked back. So now that's unjustified attack. So now we're justified in attacking you because that's justified attack. So then we have this, tit for tat going revenge. I mean, we see that everywhere. I mean, we see it in, whether it's, the old family feuds, or whether it's the history of, strife between countries, or between religious, functions, or I mean, there's always that sense of, and you can almost call it the pain body. It's almost like a legacy that we've held on to, of remembering, the grievance. And I'm going to hold on to the grievance because that's going to justify my attack, because I'm going to be feeling the pain of it. And so I'm actually choosing to hold on to the pain just so that I can feel justified in hating you and attacking you, basically. And so who's the winner there? Well, there is no winner, because, okay, I'm going to make you suffer, but heck, I'm suffering the whole time, holding on to all that pain. So, yes, so we cannot understand ourselves alone. I think that part of why we struggle with difficulty in finding meaning in our life is because we are trying to understand ourselves alone, as a separate self. Like, what am I doing here? Right? What, or you might even say, well, I didn't ask to come here. I didn't ask to be born. I'm going to blame my parents for bringing me here against my will. And so I'm going to be in a place of resistance from the very start. And so let's see. And so not only are we going to not find meaning in the world, we're going to be miserable. And so what it's saying here is that, number 2, this is because you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship. And the rightful place of the sonship is God. So all meaning comes from God in our true essential nature. That's where our true meaning is. So because that is what is life. That's what is the true life. It's not just the time span between birth and death, which we call life associated with the body. Our true meaning is in the eternal nature of what we are, not separate from God. And so that's why it uses the capital S there in the self. This is your life, your eternity, and yourself with a capital S. So, and this is what the Holy Spirit is reminding us of, that our true meaning is not in separation, it's in oneness. It is this that the Holy Spirit sees, and of course it's going to frighten the ego. Okay, because in oneness there is no strife. There is the recognition that the ego is not real. There's no separation. And therefore it's peace, it's calm. And so when we choose peace, we are choosing to remember oneness. And in oneness, there is no belief in separation. It has been undone. So that's, bye-bye to the ego, to the ego idea. So, so the ego would perceive that as an enemy. And, we invent quite a few ways to distract ourselves, to keep us out of the present now. and to keep us from going deeper into that inner peace, precisely because, you know, that's a threat to the ego. And so, according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival, because war is going to guarantee that I hold a grievance, that I choose unforgiveness, that I choose to separate from you and hold you as my enemy and not forgive you. So I'm crystallizing a word that Ken Wapnick use. I'm crystallizing guilt. um, so let's see. The ego becomes strong in strife. Well, yes, because I'm reinforcing it. So if you believe there is strife, you will react viciously because the idea of danger has entered your mind. And that in itself is an appeal to the ego. The Holy Spirit is vigilant as the ego to the call of danger, opposing it with his strength, just as the ego welcomes it. And you know, the Holy Spirit's opposition is not in the form of conflict. So the Holy Spirit's opposition to strive, to war, is really is forgiveness. So it's not opposition in the sense of battle. Let's see. So the whole 12, the Holy Spirit counters this welcome that the ego gives to strife and to conflict by welcoming peace. Eternity and peace are as closely related as are time and war. And so, you know, a lot of people are thinking about Ukraine right now and the war with Russia. And I think 13 really sums it up here. Eternity and peace are as closely related as time and war. And so the Holy Spirit would counter the idea of time and war by welcoming peace, which is eternity and peace. So we want to foster, we want to support, we want to share peace, because that would be the way to bring light into the darkness, the strife, the war. Yeah. Okay, number 9.
Okay, perception derives meaning from relationships. Those you accept are the foundations of your beliefs. The separation is merely another term for a split mind. The ego is the symbol of separation, just as the Holy Spirit is the symbol of peace. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. You may let your mind misperceive, but the Holy Spirit lets your mind reinterpret its own misperceptions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So a good example, Connie, is what you were talking about with your disappointment with your friends. Okay, because that's a relationship. And so in that example, you allowed, number 6, you allowed your mind, which was misperceiving, okay, but you allowed the Holy Spirit to reinterpret those misperceptions. So that you were able to see it a different way. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you are welcoming peace rather than feeling, you know, miserable, upset, you know, or holding something against your friend for not meeting your expectations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so the more we practice that, the more that we strengthen it.
Yes.
Mhm. And the more that we strengthen it, the more that we value it, because we are free from fear and from suffering. And so the more motivated we are to practice it,
Mhm.
so it begins to reinforce itself.
And the more peaceful we will be.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
And the more we will be in a position to share it.
Yes. It's really interesting how both my husband and I were so, our energy just completely dropped. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, we're really holding on to an expectation of it being a certain way. And it took a while to like just come back to equilibrium, so to speak. Yeah, it was a big deal. Mhm. So really something to look at.
Yes. Yeah. So because it's the meaning that you're giving to your relationships. What are they
Mhm.
for?
Mm.
Um, and so the expectation is a looking forward to something. So you want to look at what you were looking forward to, because it was something obviously that you give value to. So you want to look at,
Mm.
what you value there.
Reliving the past memories.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Which, yeah, anyway.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay. Number 10.
It's you.
It's my turn. Okay. The Holy Spirit is the perfect teacher. He uses only what your mind already understands to teach you that you do not understand it. The Holy Spirit can deal with a reluctant learner without going counter to his mind, because part of it is still for God. So despite the ego's attempts to conceal this part, it is still much stronger than the ego, although the ego does not recognize it. The Holy Spirit recognizes it perfectly because it is his own dwelling place, the place in the mind where he is at home. You are at home there too, because it is a place of peace, and peace is of God. You are part of God. You who are part of God are not at home except in his peace. If peace is eternal, you are at home only in eternity. Okay. Okay, so number 2, he uses only what your mind already understands to teach you that you do not understand it. Okay, because remember that the Holy Spirit, that the ego thought system is an upside down thought system. So it's in reverse to what the thoughts of God are, what's actually true. So he does have to, you could say, turn it upside down again to get it to be right side up. So Holy Spirit can deal with a reluctant learner without going counter to his mind, because part of it is still for God. Yes. So he doesn't have to oppose. That's the thing, the Holy Spirit does not oppose. It simply works with a part of our mind that is still for God. And even if we hide that part, it's still there, because it's our true mind. So despite the ego's attempt to conceal that part, it is still much stronger than the ego. And it's much stronger than the ego because it is the believer of the ego. Okay, so the ego is a belief, and our true mind is what chooses, what decides what it's going to believe. So it's the maker of the belief. So it is much stronger than the ego. although the ego would not recognize it. Let's see. And it is also, let's see, what the Holy Spirit recognizes because it is his own dwelling place. So the decision-making mind is the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit. The place in the mind where he is at home. And that is also our home because it is a place of peace, and peace is of God. So you could say it's the mind of God that is our home, and the home of the Holy Spirit. So 7, you who are part of God are not at home except in his peace, in his mind, because peace is eternal. So that's our home, it's eternity. And that's what we connect to in the now when we connect to the inner peace within us, which we call the Holy Spirit, which is the call for God, for eternity, for the memory of our true eternal home. So it's a remembering. It's a remembering of our true home in eternity. Okay, and this is, I think, the last paragraph for the section. Go ahead, Sonia.
The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. The Holy Spirit must perceive time and reinterpret it into the timeless. He must work through opposites because he must work with and for a mind that is in opposition. Correct and learn and be open to learning. You have not made truth, but truth can still set you free. Look as the Holy Spirit looks and understand as he understands. His understanding looks back to God in remembrance of me. He is in communion with God always, and he is part of you. He is your guide to salvation because he holds the remembrance of things past and to come, and brings them to the present. He holds this gladness gently in your mind, asking only that you increase it in his name by sharing it to increase his joy in you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really beautiful paragraph. Yeah, anything that stands out for you, Sonia?
I think it's just the willingness to be wrong is the willingness to learn. That's just what I'm getting from this paragraph. But really beautiful.
Yeah. So the Holy Spirit is talking about reinterpreting what the ego has made, which is what we call the lessons that we're here to learn. So, and in number 3, it says he must work through opposites because he must work with and for a mind that is in opposition, because that is the idea of a separate self. A separate self is a belief that I have made myself self-sufficient and independent from God, and therefore I have opposed God, and I can continue to oppose God by disobedience or by doing bad things or by sinning or things like that. So I'm holding on to a belief that the authority of God can be opposed. So it's an authority problem because somehow I'm trying to hold on to the idea that God is all powerful, but not all powerful, because what God made as a creation can then turn around and oppose God or attack God. And therefore, God would not be all powerful. So, and so those ideas in themselves form the idea of opposition. It's a dualistic system. And so that's the split mind, the mind that is perceives opposition and sees itself as being able to be opposed and as being able to oppose, which means that it sees itself as being able to be attacked and be vulnerable to attack and therefore in danger, and also to be able to attack and to put in danger. So that's where all the guilt comes in and all the fear comes in, from seeing, from believing that we can oppose and can be opposed by God and to God. So we need to correct and learn, be open to learning, which, like you said, Sonia, we need to be willing to be wrong, because we have not made truth. Okay. We want to believe that we each individually have our own truth. And therefore, I want to believe that I did make my own truth. Okay, but truth is not individual. It applies to everyone equally, or it's not truth. It's subjective. If it has exceptions, it's not absolute. It's subjective. So it's not truth with a TH. So, but the truth can still set you free. Yes. So, and it's not the individual truth that's going to set us free. That individual truth will imprison us by believing that we can be self-sufficient and make our own truth. Okay, so let's see. Look at the Holy Spirit. Look at look as the Holy Spirit looks and understand as he understands. And the Holy Spirit vision does not see evil. It does not see, it only sees innocence, and it and therefore it's seeing a reflection of itself as it is in truth, which is knowledge that we have not changed the way that God created us. So his understanding looks back to God in remembrance of me, and the me here is the Christ mind, Jesus Christ, remembrance of me, the Christ mind, who realized the truth and accepted only the truth and lived in the truth, and was the truth, the way and the truth. There's a, don't remember exactly how it goes. I am the truth and the way and the light. So he is in communion with God always, and he is a part of you. And that is our guide to salvation. And that was the title of the section, the guide to salvation. Because he holds the remembrance of things past and to come and brings them to the present. So when he does this, he is undoing time. Okay, because if he brings things of the past and the future and brings them to the present, then there's no separation now. And it's all just the present moment, which is timeless. Let's see, he holds this gladness gently in your mind, asking only that you increase it in his name by sharing it to increase his joy in you. Okay. Okay, so that concludes the section 3. Anything else before we stop?
I just want to really try to remember that last line, sharing, sharing, sharing. That's the way. Got to share it. Yeah.
Yes, and that's the whole practice of A Course in Miracles. Remember, it's our only function, which is forgiveness, and forgiveness is the act of love. So as a reflection in a world of perception of what we are in truth, which is love. Yeah. Yep. So, okay. All right, so I think that concludes this section. And next time we'll be looking at section 4, teaching and healing. Okay, so thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And until next time.